The chamber is dim, its walls carved from cool stone. A single torch flares, its flame bending gently as though stirred by a hidden breath. The glow glints across iron-bound chests and shelves of vellum maps, their edges curled and darkened by centuries. Here, deep within a vault where silence is kept like a vow, the Knights Templar once guarded secrets they believed too sacred or too dangerous to be spoken aloud. Among them, so rumor claims, were maps of lands that no sailor had seen, outlines traced from memories far older than the age of exploration. Imagine the hush of the room, the crackle of the flame, and upon the parchment, a faint shape drawn at the very bottom of the world. A coast that mirrors Antarctica, long before modern men ever set foot there. This is the mystery that stirs tonight. Could it be that the Templars, in their hidden archives, preserved echoes of a time when Antarctica was not an icy desert, but a place of forests and rivers, green valleys and open seas? The question is not born of myth alone. Beneath the ice, scientists have uncovered entire fossilized trees, trunks still standing in the frozen soil. Pollen grains tell us that 12 million years ago, tundra plants flowered where only glaciers reign today. And deeper still, locked beneath miles of ice, vast lakes and hidden rivers continue to flow, carrying secrets from an age when the continent was warmer, wetter, and alive with growth. But how could any human hands have known of this? One possibility is that fragments of ancient knowledge survived, whispered across cultures, safeguarded by orders like the Templars. Some scholars point to maps of the Renaissance that hint at a southern land drawn with uncanny precision, as though copied from a memory far older than their time. Others argue that these were only guesses, conjectures given shape by imagination. Yet the suspicion lingers like the torchlight trembling on stone. Perhaps Antarctica has been remembered longer than we think. As we enter this story, we walk a path that balances two truths: the bedrock of science that shows us Antarctica's deep past, and the thread of legend that asks whether ancient knowledge reached us through secret hands. Tonight we will follow both. We will listen to the winds across the Ellsworth Mountains and hear the silence of lakes hidden in darkness. We will pause at the crimson waters of Blood Falls and stand beside explorers who claim to glimpse impossible things. And through it all, we will watch the shadow of the Templar cross move beside us. A bridge from medieval vaults to the frozen frontier. This is Serene Myths, where mysteries are told to guide you gently into rest. If you are new here, I invite you to join us, to subscribe and to share your thoughts. Tell us which clue, which symbol, which secret you would follow deeper. The torch dims, its ember softening until it glows like a star. Slowly, the star stretches into the shimmering curtain of the aurora. And with that light above us, we step out of the vault and onto the endless ice, where the story of Antarctica begins. The aurora whispers above, green light rippling like a banner of silk in the sky. Beneath its glow, Antarctica lies in silence, a vastness of ice stretching beyond the horizon. At first glance, it seems eternal, a land forever locked in cold and shadow. Yet this frozen realm is far younger and far more changeable than the eye suggests. The story of Antarctica is not one of endless ice, but of transformations as sweeping as the tide. There was a time, millions of years ago, when the continent bloomed. In the deep past of the Eocene epoch, Antarctica basked in warmth, with temperatures nearer to a temperate spring than the bitter cold of today. Fossil leaves tell of broadleaf trees growing where glaciers now tower. In some places, trunks still stand upright in the frozen ground, as if the forest were simply interrupted, waiting patiently for the thaw. Pollen grains preserved in the soil reveal that even as late as 12 million years ago, tundra plants flourished. Life clung to the edges of the land, proving that Antarctica has worn many faces, not all of them white. Why then is it a desert of ice now? The answer lies in currents and cycles written into Earth's bones. Around 34 million years ago, a current began to circle the southern pole like a moat. The Antarctic Circumpolar Current sealed the continent away, cutting off warmer waters, locking it into cold isolation. Layer upon layer of ice gathered, until 2 miles of frozen time pressed down upon the land. Over the millennia, rhythms of Earth's orbit, known as Milankovitch cycles, swung temperatures back and forth, carving pulses of ice ages and brief interludes of warmth. Antarctica became a stage where climate change plays out in slow but dramatic acts, each leaving traces still visible in fossils, sediments, and the murmur of trapped air within the ice. Yet in the modern age, our eyes catch other shapes upon this canvas. From above, satellites sweep across the continent, and their images sometimes reveal forms too geometric, too precise, to seem natural at first glance. Pyramidal peaks rise from the ice, nunataks shaped by weathering and shadow into angles that call to mind ancient temples. Dark hollows open like doorways in sheer cliffs, only to close again when the season shifts, their shapes a trick of light and melting ice. Long steps descend across slopes where glaciers grind, patterns sculpted by freeze and thaw. Scientists see geology, wind, and the physics of ice. Others see construction, doorways, staircases carved by forgotten hands. The mind flickers between both explanations, caught in the tension between what is measured and what is imagined. It is in that tension that legends grow. For centuries, mapmakers drew outlines of southern lands long before any explorer reached those latitudes. Terra Australis appeared as a shadow across their charts, vast and enticing, a land placed at the edge of knowledge. Some whisper that these shapes were born of guesswork, others that they echoed a memory passed down through lost civilizations. And here the Templar Bridge appears once more, its stones worn smooth by speculation. When their order was dissolved in 1312, their knowledge did not vanish. It seeped into the networks of successor orders, among them the Portuguese Order of Christ, whose navigators carried Europe across oceans. Could it be that maps preserved in secret vaults, perhaps even resembling those drawn in our opening vault, guided such hands? The suggestion lingers, though scholars caution it is more myth than evidence. Still, myth often finds a way of tethering itself to truth, like a shadow bound to its flame. Antarctica invites such thoughts precisely because so much of it remains unseen. Beneath the ice sheet lies an entire hidden world. More than 400 subglacial lakes ripple in darkness, connected by unseen rivers. Lake Vostok, buried beneath nearly 4 kilometers of ice, holds water that has been sealed away for millions of years. In Lake Mercer, reached by drilling, scientists uncovered traces of microbial life, tiny forms clinging to existence in isolation. In the enigmatically named Lake Enigma, mats of microorganisms spread across the floor, forming colonies as complex as carpets. And beyond the lakes, under collapsed shelves of ice, explorers have discovered entire communities of strange life thriving in the absence of light. Here, then, is a library of nature, a library bound not in parchment, but in ice and water, waiting to be read Some believe that what we uncover in these hidden places will teach us not only about Antarctica's past, but about life beyond Earth, on frozen moons and planets far away. Others see in these secret worlds a mirror of human myth, as if the continent itself has taken on the role once played by secret orders, guarding, preserving, hiding knowledge until the appointed time. As we step further into this story, the echoes of science and speculation continue to mingle. The Templar torch, once raised in darkened vaults, becomes a line of light across a glacier. The wind scatters the flame into long ribbons that resemble the very auroras we stand beneath. And as those auroras shimmer above the white desert, we turn now toward the first mystery that rises from the snow. The shapes that look too sharp, too deliberate, too architectural to be left by nature alone. The wind lifts a veil of powdery snow, and for a moment the sun strikes an exposed peak. Its sides rise in sharp angles, shadows falling into neat lines as though a mason's chisel had shaped them. From a certain vantage, it appears not as a mountain, but as a pyramid, an echo of Egypt set adrift in Antarctica's frozen heart. The eye lingers on the symmetry, too regular, too geometric to be dismissed without a second glance. The red cross of the Templar surcoat flickers in memory, overlapping with the satellite's image. As if one world were mapped upon another. These formations are found in the Ellsworth Mountains, where jagged nunataks pierce through the ice. The tallest among them rise more than 4,000 feet above the glacier. Seen from above, one in particular shows 4 faces meeting at a peak, its silhouette resembling the classical pyramid shape known from Giza. The angles look deliberate, almost mathematical, inviting the imagination to leap toward construction rather than coincidence. It is in human nature to see patterns in stone, to assign design where geometry emerges from chaos. Geologists, however, offer another voice. They explain that these peaks are shaped by a blend of erosion, frost action, and glacial scouring. Wind, ever relentless, carves facets into rock faces, while cycles of thaw and freeze fracture and sharpen edges. Over time, the mountain becomes a polyhedron, a natural pyramid born of cold mechanics. To their eyes, the pyramid illusion is simply a nunatak trimmed by millennia of ice and wind. Yet the illusion persists because it feels too perfect to be accidental. Photographs circulate online, images taken from satellites or aircraft. Some enhanced to highlight the angles, others drawn into neat wireframes with straight lines that human hands favor. And so the debate kindles. Is this an untouched mountain, or the weathered skeleton of something ancient and intentional? The unusual detail that strengthens curiosity is that the pyramid does not always appear the same. Seasonal photographs reveal how its form changes under shifting snow and light. In one image, sharp corners leap out. In another, the same slopes blur into irregular faces, indistinguishable from surrounding peaks. The pyramid seems to hide and reveal itself like a mirage, feeding suspicion that there is more to the story than erosion. It is here that the Templar bridge surfaces again. In medieval Europe, the Order's cartographers drew maps not just for navigation, but to guard knowledge. Imagine them unrolling a chart where a southern land was sketched not as blank space, but marked with symbols, mountains rising like pyramids, coastal shapes traced by memory. If such an image existed, and if fragments of it passed into later map-making traditions, then perhaps what satellites show us today feels eerily familiar because it matches an outline whispered across centuries. Did the Templars preserve not just the locations of ports and fortresses, but shadows of a world few had ever seen. Skeptics remind us that this is conjecture, and rightly so. No proven record ties the Templars to Antarctic imagery. No parchment survives with pyramids sketched upon ice. Yet the idea resonates because it connects visible shapes in the present with the aura of secrecy in the past. The cross carved on stone walls in a French vault becomes a cross of light on Antarctic snow. The bridge between them is not evidence, but imagination. And imagination has always been a companion to discovery. The question remains, lingering like the chill in the air. If we are so easily convinced by shadows of pyramids and ice, what other forms might nature sculpt that will tempt us towards stories of human design? How do we separate the hand of time from the hand of builders, the tricks of weather from the whispers of lost civilizations? The wind gathers, brushing the pyramid slopes with fresh snow, and its angles begin to soften again. The shape is less certain, the illusion fading into natural rock. In that quieting moment we turn away, letting the debate drift behind us like snow carried on the wind. Ahead lies a deeper mystery, one that does not dwell on shapes seen from afar, but on entire worlds hidden beneath the ice, worlds of water and darkness, of life thriving where no light reaches. And so the torchlight from the Templar vault shimmers once more, dissolving into the sterile glow of a laboratory lamp. Beneath that glow, we prepare to descend through miles of ice toward the secret waters of Lake Vostok, Lake Mercer, and Lake Enigma, the frozen library beneath Antarctica. The sound begins as a distant hum, a vibration that grows steadier until it becomes the mechanical thrum of a drill. Imagine standing on the endless white plain of East Antarctica, where the air is razor thin with cold, and a cluster of tents and steel rigs pierces the silence. Here, scientists work not to build upon the surface, but to descend, carving through miles of ice in search of something concealed for millions of years. As the drill bites deeper, the glow of a laboratory lamp flickers in memory, and we see again the image of a Templar scribe bending over a manuscript. On the margin of his parchment, a doodle of a fish seems to swim, and in that small flourish we glimpse the bridge between ancient imagination and the hidden waters of today. Beneath nearly 4 kilometers of ice lies Lake Vostok, one of the largest subglacial lakes on Earth. Its waters have been sealed from the surface for as long as 15 million years, cut off by the unyielding sheet of ice. Scientists believe it stretches more than 250 kilometers in length, a vast inland sea cloaked in darkness. In 2012, after decades of effort, Russian teams succeeded in drilling into its upper layers, using sterile, clean-access protocols to avoid contamination. The samples they retrieved contained signs of microbial life, bacteria adapted to survive in pressure and isolation that seem almost alien to us. Lake Vostok is not alone. Across the continent, more than 400 subglacial lakes have been mapped, their positions revealed by radar that penetrates the ice. Beneath them flows a hidden web of rivers and channels, connecting some lakes, isolating others, forming an unseen hydrological system larger than many countries. Lake Mercer, drilled in 2019, revealed not only microbial traces but also the remains of diatoms, tiny algae that once lived in sunlight. This suggests that Mercer's waters may have been connected to the ocean at some point in the distant past, or that floods periodically surged beneath the ice, carrying fragments of life across frozen frontiers. Then there is Lake Enigma, aptly named, where mats of microbial communities form intricate patterns upon the lake bed. These mats live without light, feeding on chemical reactions instead of photosynthesis. They spread across the darkness like tapestries, woven by the smallest of hands. In such places, nature demonstrates resilience so profound it echoes far beyond Earth. If life can endure here, beneath kilometers of ice in water isolated for eons, then perhaps life can endure on the icy moons of Jupiter or Saturn. In this way, Antarctica becomes a window not just into our own past, but into the possibilities of other worlds. The unusual detail that catches the imagination is how these lakes are not stagnant. They move. Water slips beneath the ice sheet, flowing from one reservoir to another, draining and refilling in cycles. In some places, the ice above rises and falls by meters as the lakes beneath swell and collapse. Like hidden tides, it is as if the continent breathes a slow rhythm undetectable to the naked eye, but traceable by satellites and instruments. To imagine Antarctica as inert, frozen, and still is to overlook the quiet pulse of its hidden veins. The bridge to the Templars emerges when we think of the purpose of these sealed places. Just as the Order once guarded relics, manuscripts, and secrets behind locked doors and stone walls, so too does Antarctica guard a library written in ice and water. Vostok, Mercer, Enigma, each is a vault of knowledge containing not books, but organisms, not parchment, but chemical signatures of ancient climates. To reach them requires drilling as careful as opening a reliquary, lest contamination destroy what has been preserved. It is a reminder that the guardianship of knowledge is not confined to human hands. Sometimes the Earth itself holds the role. Skeptics remind us, of course, that we should not leap to mystical conclusions. These lakes are products of geology and climate, not of design or prophecy. Yet the parallel remains tempting. Both the Templar vaults and the Antarctic lakes symbolize hidden reservoirs, knowledge preserved for those who dare to search. The scientist in his insulated parka, hunched over instruments in the icy dark, is not so different in spirit from the monk bent over a candlelit desk. Both are custodians of fragments of truth, each protected by silence until the right moment arrives. And so the question grows, gentle but persistent. What else lies sealed beneath this continent, waiting for light? Could entire ecosystems remain untouched, harboring life forms never seen before? Could chemical traces tell us of past climates, of forests that grew and vanished, of oceans that once lapped against green shores? If the Templars had walked these vaults, would they have called them libraries of God's creation, hidden until humanity was ready to read them? The hum of the drill fades, leaving only the steady creak of the ice. Above, the aurora bends, shimmering like ink spilled across a manuscript. And from the darkness beneath, where microbes drift in ancient waters, rises another thought. Not all mysteries lie hidden under ice. Some are visible, flowing openly, though they appear so strange that they feel like a miracle. Ahead of us lies one such wonder, where a waterfall as red as blood pours from the white cliffs of a glacier. If you could open just one of these hidden lakes without harm, which would it be? Vostok, Mercer, or Enigma? Tell us, and we'll follow it deeper. And as the red stream comes into view, it reflects the shape of the cross, bridging once more the medieval order with the frozen frontier. We walk now toward the next chapter, the story of Blood Falls. The glacier is pale and silent, a sheer wall of ice gleaming beneath the low Antarctic sun. Then, from a fracture in its surface, a startling vision appears, a stream of liquid as red as fresh blood. spilling downward in slow rivulets across the frozen white. The contrast is so stark, so unexpected, that even seasoned explorers once gasped at the sight. This is Blood Falls, a place where science and symbol meet in a vision that looks like a miracle carved into ice. And in its crimson flow, the mind cannot help but see the echo of another image. The red cross of the Templar Order, stained against the snow. The story of Blood Falls begins more than 100 years ago. In 1911, an Australian geologist named Griffith Taylor explored the edge of Taylor Glacier in East Antarctica. There, he found this strange cascade of red water pouring from the ice. At first, its color was a mystery, a riddle against the whiteness. Later study revealed that the water comes from a reservoir sealed beneath the glacier, rich in iron and salt. When the brine rises and meets the air, the iron oxidizes, turning a brilliant shade of red, as though the glacier itself bleeds. Yet the science does not make the wonder vanish. If anything, it deepens it. The water that emerges at Blood Falls is older than recorded history, trapped for nearly 2 million years beneath the ice. Within it live communities of microorganisms that do not need sunlight to survive. Instead, they thrive on chemical reactions, feeding on sulfur and iron, building entire ecosystems in conditions that would seem impossible to us. Here, life finds a way where light cannot reach, echoing the hidden worlds of Lake Vostok and Lake Mercer. The unusual detail is that this brine remains liquid even in temperatures far below freezing. Its salt concentration is so extreme that it cannot freeze, not even under the weight of a glacier. Instead, it slips through fissures and emerges into the open, painting the ice in colors that look both alien and symbolic. For centuries, red has been the color of blood, sacrifice, alchemy. To see it flow from the heart of a glacier is to witness nature speaking in a language humans have always found meaningful. It is here that the Templar Bridge glows most vividly. The red cross on a white field, emblem of their order, has long stood for sacrifice and hidden knowledge, for a covenant sealed in secrecy. Imagine a knight pausing before this site, seeing in the crimson water not chemistry, but a sign. The earth itself marked with their symbol. Just as the Templars guarded relics said to bear holy blood, Antarctica reveals a relic of its own, where the planet bleeds minerals into the cold air. The parallel is unintentional, but powerful. A cross of red flowing across a field of white. Skeptics will say, and truly, that this is nothing more than iron oxidation, explained by geology and chemistry, no different than rust upon a ship's hull. And yet, the emotional force of the site remains. We are creatures who respond not just to fact, but to symbol, who weave stories even from the laws of nature. Perhaps this is why Blood Falls lingers in the imagination long after the explanation is known. The pivot question that rises here is simple but profound. When we encounter wonders that science can explain, do we lose their magic, or do we find new magic in understanding? Does knowing the chemistry of Blood Falls diminish its strangeness, or does it deepen our awe to realize that life can survive in brine sealed away for ages, that red rivers can flow beneath glaciers as if they carried memory itself? The stream trickles on, drop by drop, each a bead of color staining the ice. In the silence, it sounds almost like a bell tolling, each note ringing faintly against the stillness. The bell of the Templars, the bell of a cloister, the bell of a glacier cracking in the cold. All overlap in memory, a chorus of echoes across centuries. And from that crimson vision we turn toward another chapter, darker still. For as strange as Blood Falls is, it pales before the tales that emerged from Antarctica during the wars of the 20th century. Tales of expeditions cloaked in secrecy, of operations that ended too soon, and of diaries that spoke of impossible encounters. Ahead lies the shadow of New Swabia, of Operation Highjump, and of the stories that grew in their wake. The sea is gray and restless, icebergs drifting like watchful sentinels across the Southern Ocean. A ship cuts its way forward, its wake white against the still waters. In memory, another flag unfurls, the red cross of the Templars fluttering against the wind. And then it fades, replaced by the insignia of a different era. In the late 1930s and 1940s, Antarctica became the stage for expeditions that would stir whispers of secrets and fuel legends that persist to this day. A century of clues lines the path behind us. 1911 Blood Falls noted. 1938-39 New Swabia flights. 1946-47 Highjump, 1959-61 the treaty, each a notch on the continent's locked door. In 1938, Germany launched the New Swabia expedition, sending the vessel Schwabenland southward to claim land and survey the frozen continent. Aircraft flew over vast stretches, dropping aluminum darts marked with swastikas to assert symbolic presence. Their maps recorded oases of bare ground, patches where warm winds and unusual geography left rock exposed amid the ice. For geologists, these features were natural blue ice zones, areas where katabatic winds stripped snow away. Yet for others, they became fertile ground for imagination. Rumors grew of hidden bases, of shelters built in the hollows of the land, stories amplified by the shadow of war. A decade later, in 1946, Operation Highjump brought the United States Navy to Antarctica in a display of power and logistics unmatched until then. Commanded by Admiral Richard Byrd, the operation involved more than 4,000 men, over a dozen ships and numerous aircraft. Officially, its goals were training, testing equipment, and scientific surveys. Yet the scale, so soon after the Second World War, seemed to many observers far greater than what such purposes demanded. The mission ended earlier than planned, feeding speculation that something had been encountered, something withheld from public knowledge. The unusual detail that fuels mystery is the story of Admiral Byrd's supposed secret diary. Circulating from the 1960s onward, the document, never authenticated, claimed that Byrd entered a hidden world beneath the ice, where he encountered beings of great power and knowledge. In these pages, Antarctica was no longer just a continent, but a gateway to Agartha, to the hollow earth, to realms of myth disguised as geography. Scholars and historians dismiss the diary as a fabrication, noting its lack of provenance and inconsistencies with Byrd's verified records. Yet, like all compelling myths, it refuses to fade, continuing to ripple through books, films, and whispered conversations. Science offers its anchor here. The oases noted by New Swabia's aircraft are explained by katabatic winds, which sweep down slopes with such force that they scour away snow and reveal bare rock. These areas are rare but real, and while they may appear anomalous from above, they are understood by glaciology. Operation Highjump's early conclusion is well documented as a consequence of accidents, logistical challenges, and the sheer severity of Antarctic weather, which damaged ships and aircraft alike. To scientists and historians, The tales of hidden realms remain cautionary examples of how mystery thrives where access is restricted and records are fragmentary. Yet the Templar Bridge rises here in the form of secrecy itself. Just as the Order kept vaults locked, its archives sealed from outsiders, so too did wartime powers treat Antarctica as a theater for hidden agendas. The continent's remoteness, its impenetrable cold, made it the perfect canvas upon which rumors could be painted. Whether it was maps concealed by monks or reports locked in military files, the result is the same: a sense that something is withheld. And where there is secrecy, imagination fills the void. The question that emerges in the stillness is this: how do we navigate the line between documented history and the seduction of hidden tales? What portion of the past is fact, and what portion is the echo of our need to believe in something concealed? As we ponder this, the image of a flag snapping in the wind lingers. Not only the banners of 20th century powers, but the crimson cross of centuries before. Both signal allegiance, both command loyalty, both are raised in lands far from their origins. The ocean groans as icebergs shift, colliding with a sound like thunder rolling across the sea. The ships of Operation Highjump fade into the distance, their decks empty now, their missions complete. What remains are the legends, carried on by the wind, as indelible in memory as the scars glaciers leave upon stone. From here, the story moves not through flags and fleets, but into parchment and law. For as rumors swelled in the wake of these expeditions, the nations of the world took another step: to bind Antarctica with treaties and seals, to declare it off-limits in ways that only deepen its aura of mystery. And so we turn to the next chapter, the story of the Antarctic Treaty, and how its protections have become a fortress of both science and secrecy. The sound is softer now, less like the roar of ships, and more like the whisper of parchment being unrolled. A wax seal presses against the page, and for a moment the image becomes uncertain. Is it the crimson stamp of a Templar charter, or the blue and white emblem of a modern treaty? The two blur together, symbols of promises made in secrecy and in trust. In the middle of the 20th century, after years of expeditions, rival claims, and wartime rumors, Antarctica was bound not by conquest but by agreement. Its frontier was sealed, and in that sealing, myth found fertile ground once more. The Antarctic Treaty was signed in 1959, entering into force in 1961. 12 nations, including those with active research stations and exploration histories, agreed upon a vision that was strikingly rare for the Cold War era. The treaty declared the continent a place of peace, banning military activity, weapons testing, and nuclear waste disposal. Scientific cooperation was to take precedence over territorial disputes, and all existing claims were set aside without being erased. It was in many ways a pact to preserve Antarctica as a shared laboratory, a sanctuary for knowledge rather than conflict. To many, this was a triumph. For the first time, a continent was dedicated not to borders or battles, but to the pursuit of understanding. The treaty has since grown to include more than 50 nations, expanding into a wider system of protocols that protect the environment, regulate tourism, and designate specially protected areas where human presence is tightly restricted. In an age defined by division, Antarctica became a rare space where nations chose restraint. Yet the unusual detail lies in the very restrictions themselves. The treaty and its extensions carve the continent into zones of permitted and forbidden. Certain areas are off-limits without authorization, their access controlled by international committees. Entire airspaces are marked as no-fly zones, not only for safety, but for preservation. Protected microsites forbid disturbance down to the level of pebbles and moss, enforced with strict penalties. These measures are necessary to guard fragile ecosystems and scientific studies. But to those on the outside, they carry the texture of secrecy. When something is closed, the mind imagines why. It is here that the Templar Bridge appears once more. Just as their order locked archives behind heavy doors, insisting that only the initiated could know their contents, so too does the Antarctic Treaty system create sealed spaces in the name of protection. Scholars argue, and rightly, that these protections are essential to prevent contamination and exploitation. But in the imagination of those who see Antarctica as a place of buried secrets, each seal is another confirmation. The less accessible the land becomes, the more compelling the thought that something is being hidden within it. Skeptics caution us not to overreach. The treaty is a legal framework, transparent in its wording, its documents public, its enforcement visible. There is no evidence that hidden vaults lie beneath its clauses. Yet myth thrives not in evidence, but in ambiguity. To the dreamer, a locked door does not signal preservation, it signals mystery. The Antarctic Treaty, while born of science and cooperation, has thus become one of the most powerful engines for conspiracy in the modern imagination. And so the question arises, how do we balance preservation with openness? How do we protect what is fragile without feeding the suspicion that protection is disguise? Is a continent better guarded by treaties and seals, or by the patient curiosity of those who yearn to know? The wax cools on the page, hardening into permanence. Outside, the wind moans across the plateau, its sound like a chant echoing through a cloister. In the distance, the aurora bends once more, green fire spilling across the horizon. The seal is pressed, the treaty signed, and Antarctica becomes a sanctuary guarded by law. But even within sanctuaries, change creeps in. The ice itself is shifting, responding to a warming world. Along the peninsula, moss begins to spread across wet rock. Penguins shift their nesting grounds, and the edges of the continent show hints of green. It is here, at the fragile meeting point of past and future, that we turn next. The story carries us from seals of parchment to sprouts of life, from the strict stillness of treaties to the quiet resilience of moss. Antarctica, once forested, then frozen, now whispers again of renewal. And so we walk onward into the next chapter, the greening edges of the frozen continent. The wind softens as we move north along the Antarctic Peninsula, where the air is gentler and the sea laps against rocky shores. Here the continent begins to show another face, not of endless whiteness, but of subtle color. Against the black stone, moss clings in damp patches, bright green against the cold. Tiny lichens spread across the rock, weaving patterns of gray, yellow, and orange. To the casual eye, it may seem insignificant. Yet to scientists, these are signs of transformation. Signals that Antarctica, for all its stillness, is changing once more. In recent decades, the western edge of Antarctica has warmed faster than almost any place on Earth. The peninsula, jutting like a finger toward South America, has seen average temperatures climb sharply. Glaciers retreat, ice shelves collapse, and the landscape responds. Where once there was only rock and snow, moss now spreads with greater vigor, nourished by meltwater that trickles through the cracks. On the surface, it is quiet, even beautiful.
Beneath it,
A green thread stitching across the black stone. Yet beneath it lies the story of a continent shifting its identity. The unusual detail lies in the resilience of this life. Scientists have revived ancient moss, frozen for centuries within the permafrost, bringing it back to growth under light and warmth. It is as if the plants themselves had been waiting, dormant but not gone, ready to reawaken when the ice gave way. In another study, microbes sealed for thousands of years were found capable of stirring again once freed. The line between life and dormancy in Antarctica is thin, blurred by cold, but never entirely broken. To those who study climate, this greening is both a warning and a revelation. On the one hand, it tells us of warming seas, rising temperatures, and ice that cannot hold. On the other, it whispers of what Antarctica once was, a place where forests grew, where rivers ran, where tundra plants bloomed. The cycle is not new. The continent has shifted before. Yet the pace now is quicker, driven not by the slow dance of orbital rhythms, but by the pressing hand of human activity. What once unfolded over millennia now advances in centuries. The Templar bridge flickers here in the imagery of prophecy. Medieval mystics and later voices like Edgar Cayce spoke of poles shifting, of lands buried by ice rising again to life. In their time, such words were visions or warnings, painted in symbols of judgment and renewal. Today, climate models speak with different language but point to a similar truth. Antarctica will change. Its edges greening, its seas reshaping the world's coastlines. Prophecy and science converge not in mechanism, but in message. That the Earth is never fixed, and humanity must learn to live with its tides. The question that stirs here is gentle yet sobering. What will be revealed as the ice continues to melt? Fossil forests already tell us of verdant ages past. Lakes hidden beneath glaciers show us ecosystems untouched by light. As the coastline softens and green spreads further, might more ancient traces emerge, ruins of early camps, or even signs of past life we have not yet imagined? Or will the revelations be less romantic but more urgent, rising seas, shifting climates, and the reminders that our world is fragile? The moss brightens in the sun, small and defiant against the weight of ice. A penguin colony shifts its ground nearby, nesting further inland where snow has melted earlier than before. The wind carries the scent of salt water, mingled with the faint must of lichen. This is the future of Antarctica, unfolding at its edges. Not sudden, not dramatic, but insistent, like a steady drumbeat heard beneath the roar of storms. And so we arrive at the close of this arc of mysteries. From pyramidal mountains to hidden lakes, from red waterfalls to wartime rumors, from treaties to the stirrings of green, Antarctica has shown us faces both scientific and symbolic. The continent is not static but alive, a canvas of change where fact and imagination intertwine. The aurora glows above, shimmering like ink across parchment. In that glow, the Templar torch reappears one last time in the mystery core, its flame flickering as though to guide us onward. For now we step across the bridge from story into speculation, from observation into hypothesis. Ahead lies the realm where we ask directly, what if? What if the Templars preserved maps of lands, long forgotten? What if Earth's crust itself shifts more suddenly than science allows? What if the legends of wartime expeditions conceal truths yet untold? The torch fades into the wind. The aurora stretches wider, and we cross into the next part of our journey, the hypotheses and controversies that linger. Around Antarctica's forbidden history, the aurora stretches across the sky like a vast living manuscript. Each ribbon of light a line of text that drifts into the horizon. We have walked through the landscapes of ice, of crimson falls and hidden lakes, of treaties sealed and rumors whispered. Now, with the Templar torch faint but steady, we arrive at a threshold, the realm of hypotheses and controversies. Here, fact and speculation share the same table, each cup filled with different vintages of truth. We will consider 3 ideas in turn, each a thread woven through both history and imagination, and ask what they reveal, what they obscure, and why they endure. The first hypothesis is that the Knights Templar preserved cartographic echoes of Antarctica, fragments of knowledge that later bled into Renaissance maps. The Templars, dissolved in 1312, scattered their networks across Europe, with many knights absorbed into the Portuguese Order of Christ. It was this order that later sponsored explorers like Henry the Navigator, whose voyages helped open new horizons. Some point to maps of the early 16th century, like the Peary Race Chart, which seem to sketch a southern coast that resembles, in part, an ice-free Antarctica. The detail is striking, bays and promontories aligned loosely with what modern surveys would later confirm. Could this be coincidence? Or did it hint at a memory carried from a time when the continent's shores were green? The unusual detail is that some Portolan maps, the sea charts of the late Middle Ages, are drawn with windrose lattices that resemble cloister floor mosaics, geometric webs of lines, radiating like sunbursts. The resemblance is not proof, but it tempts the imagination to connect monastic geometry with maritime navigation, sacred design with worldly travel. It is in these resonances that the idea of Templar preservation gains its allure. Historians, however, provide critique. They note that mapmakers often filled blank spaces with conjecture, drawing lands where they believed balance demanded symmetry. Terra Australis was not discovery but deduction, the assumption that a vast southern land must exist to counterbalance the northern continents. The apparent accuracy of early outlines may be coincidence, the result of copying and distortion, rather than preserved knowledge. No parchment ties directly to the Templars. No archive reveals Antarctica sketched in medieval ink. And so the hypothesis rests in shadow, compelling in symbol, fragile in evidence. The second hypothesis draws from the cycles of Earth itself, the notion that Antarctica's transformations are not only gradual, but sudden and catastrophic. Edgar Cayce, the American mystic of the 20th century, spoke of polar shifts and lands rising from beneath ice, visions that echoed medieval prophecies of upheaval. Supporters of this view sometimes link it to true polar wander or crustal displacement, suggesting that the Earth's outer shell might slide dramatically, relocating continents within human memory. The scientific foundation is subtler. We know that Earth's orbital cycles, the tilt, wobble, and stretch of its path, drive glacial rhythms, advancing and retreating ice over tens of thousands of years. We know, too, that plates drift and poles wander, but at scales of millions of years. Antarctica's fossil forests stand upright at Beardmore Glacier, testimony to an age when the land was far warmer. These trees, preserved in permafrost, feel like time capsules, sparking the sense that dramatic shifts can happen with a suddenness we cannot imagine. The unusual detail here is that in the fossil record, there are indeed abrupt moments, layers where climate seems to swing in centuries rather than millennia, where thresholds are crossed and ecosystems vanish almost overnight. To those who long for connections between prophecy and science, these moments of rapid change feel like the footholds of myth. Yet scientists critique the leap from data to doctrine. There is no evidence that Earth's crust has slid whole in recorded history. No mechanism to support Casey's visions of continents reorienting within lifetimes. The changes we trace are immense, but their tempo belongs to deep time, not human time. Prophecies of sudden polar reversals remain symbolic, not geophysical. Still, the imagery endures. A planet turning in its sleep, shifting its blanket of ice from one pole to another. The third hypothesis arises from the 20th century's shadows, the idea that wartime expeditions concealed more than they revealed. The German New Swabia flights of 1938-39, the American Operation Highjump of 1946-47, and the supposed diary of Admiral Byrd have become cornerstones of Antarctica's mythology. In these tales, the continent is not merely a frontier, but a gateway, sheltering advanced technology, hidden civilizations, or entrances to the hollow Earth. The factual foundation is straightforward. New Swabia charted regions, dropped markers, and noted blue ice oases created by fierce winds. Operation Highjump, with its massive naval presence, trained crews in cold weather operations and conducted mapping flights. Its premature end was due to accidents, logistical strain, and the brutality of the environment. These are the records we can verify. The unusual detail lies in the psychological phenomenon known as the third man factor. Experienced by polar explorers who report a felt presence, an unseen companion guiding them in moments of extreme stress. Shackleton described it, and others since have echoed the same. In the vast emptiness of Antarctica, minds project company into the void. This same mechanism may fuel legends. The Diary of Byrd, though unauthenticated, resonates because it feels like an extension of that very presence, a mythic companion for a continent of isolation. Historians critique the narrative. The diary has no provenance. The more extravagant claims of hidden realms remain unsupported, and the allure of secret bases is fed less by evidence than by our mistrust of secrecy. Yet the speculation persists, woven into novels, films, and endless retellings, because it gives shape to the feeling Antarctica already evokes. That of a forbidden threshold, guarded not just by ice but by silence. 3 hypotheses, each a mirror reflecting both fact and yearning. Cartographic echoes suggest memory carried forward, though evidence falters. Prophecies of crustal shifts evoke awe at Earth's cycles, though science demands patience and scale. Wartime shadows invite suspicion of hidden truths, though history points to more mundane causes. Each carries a seed of reality and a flower of imagination. And in their contrast, we glimpse why Antarctica endures as a canvas for mystery. The Templar torch flickers again, its glow cast across all 3. For the Order once embodied the same triad: secrecy, prophecy, and guardianship of knowledge. To some, they were keepers of ancient truths. To others, opportunists bound by myth. The bridge they built is the same bridge we walk now, spanning between the vault of history and the expanse of legend. And as the aurora fades into softer hues, the question is left with us, unclosed. Are we chasing shadows across the ice, or tracing faint outlines of truths too vast to hold in a single hand? The parchment closes, the seal cools, and the torch's ember dwindles. Ahead lies only the quiet, the wind, and the need to rest. It is here that we turn to the final part of our journey, where the narrative slows, the motifs return, and the story settles into silence. The wind-down ending waits, gentle as falling snow. The torch that once burned in the Templar vault is now only a faint ember, resting in the cradle of darkness. Its glow softens until it no longer seems like fire at all, but like a shimmer of aurora drifting across the Antarctic sky. Around us, the great continent lies in stillness, its mysteries layered in ice, its truths folded like pages within a frozen library. We began with a question. Could it be that fragments of ancient knowledge, perhaps safeguarded by the Knights Templar, carried whispers of a greener Antarctica? And though we have wandered far, through pyramids of stone, crimson falls, secret lakes, wartime shadows, and greening shores, the question remains open, like a door half ajar in a cloister. What we know is powerful. Antarctica was once forested, alive with rivers and broadleaf trees. Fossil trunks and grains of pollen speak with voices older than human memory. Beneath the ice, lakes and rivers still flow, guarded in darkness, nurturing forms of life adapted to conditions harsher than any surface can bear. The peninsula warms even now, moss brightening stones that were bare for centuries, a reminder that change is not distant but here. These are truths as solid as rock and as cold as ice. What we imagine is enduring, that maps may hold echoes of forgotten ages, that sudden shifts could turn the world upon itself, that treaties, like sealed vaults, may guard more than they reveal. These speculations, though less grounded, are the shadows cast by our yearning. A yearning to believe that we are not alone in remembering, that our ancestors held secrets that stretch further back than our history allows. The motifs that guided us return one by one. The Red Cross, once a symbol upon shields, glows again in the waters of Blood Falls, where minerals turn brine to crimson. The wax seal pressed upon parchment echoes in the Antarctic Treaty, a modern covenant preserving silence where we cannot tread. The footsteps of knights and cloisters resound faintly in the crack of glaciers, in the shifting of icebergs as they turn upon the sea. The bridge holds, from medieval vault to frozen desert, from torch to aurora, from bell to wind. And so the story comes to rest. The mystery is not solved, and perhaps it never will be. But in that uncertainty lies a gentleness, a space for wonder that can cradle us into sleep. Antarctica remains both laboratory and legend, a continent where science uncovers truths while myth keeps vigil in the shadows. The Templars, too, remain both order and enigma, remembered as guardians of knowledge, whether real or imagined. Together they remind us that not all doors need to be opened, not all vaults need to be unsealed. Sometimes it is enough to know they are there, waiting. The ember dims further, its last glow dissolving into the sky. The aurora fades, leaving only stars. The wind moves across the ice in long, sighing breaths, carrying with it the echoes of chants, the hush of parchment, the silence of forgotten maps. All grows still, as though the continent itself has settled into slumber, and so we too rest. The story lingers, soft as falling snow. May it guide you gently into your own dreamlands, where torches burn without end and auroras dance forever. This is Serene Myths. If you wish to wander further with us, subscribe and share your thoughts, so that together we may continue tracing the bridges between history and mystery. Now the night closes, the flame extinguished, the ice eternal. Sleep well and let the wind carry you into silence.